Hey, what is going on YouTube? Aaron here. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. And guys, we've got a fun one for you in today's video. We are in the Shimanto here, the newest Tier 7 of the newest Japanese light cruiser line to come to World of Warships Legends. But without further ado, let's go ahead and look at our modifications, modules, followed by our stats, armor, and of course the commander guide. Aiming system in slot 1 there, propulsion in slot 2, concealment in slot 3, and reload in slot 4. You could make the argument for range, seeing as how the main battery range is not that far, but your reload is truly abysmal, and we will take a look at that right now. HP 44,500. However, wait till we get to the armor scheme, because that HP will go quickly. 5x3 150 millimeter guns, 15.7 range there with a 12.8 reload, and only a 12% fire chance. I know a lot of people were like, oh no, we don't need more HE spam. Well guys, I'm telling you, these are not the ships to do it in. However, with your complement of torpedoes, you can see how long range they are, 15.9 kilometer range there. You can get some pretty nice combos going. However, you're going to need to be put the ship in the right position. You do have a 90 overall AA defense, which is why you should never look at that number, and we will kind of show you in this game. Not a single one of these values is over 100, which is pretty bad. So maybe combined you have somewhat of a decent AA platform, but it's not great. Maneuverability is pretty good at 73 there with a 36 knot top speed, a good turning circle, and a decent rudder. And concealment is very good with a 9.5 kilometer detection. Now we are running Makawa and Mimbelli to think about our reload. And I wanted to go over our stats because even though we only have 3 games, they're actually pretty good at 2,600 average XP there with 1.4 average attracted damage in these very light armored ships. And the reason I wanted to go over that is because it's all about your positioning, your situational awareness, knowing when to throttle jockey, and knowing when not to sail broadside. I see there's been this argument forever about agile builds and different things like that. I also wanted to bring up torpedo accuracy because you're just constantly throwing out torpedoes. And if you have a high torpedo accuracy in this ship, you are getting far too close too often. And here, let's go ahead and go look at a glaring weakness from these ships, your armor. 25 covering the entire thing except for the Citadel, which is a little bit of armor scrapped together. So you can angle, but it's not going to do much. I have yet to be fully yeeted in one of these things, but I've been very careful about my positioning. And of course, we only have 3 games. This is a limited sample size. I'm sure my stats are definitely going to change. People are going to be like, oh, there's only 3 games. And that's your average commenter who also wants to talk about pronunciations in the chat, in the comments. But as you can see, a pretty high above the water. Not that high, but enough above the water line to where you don't want to sail broadside. You have a sloped, it's not a turtleback, but you have a sloped armor belt at the top there, so you will also fall victim to plunging fire, as well as pretty much any other battleship caliber shell, heck, even heavy cruiser shells you're going to have a problem with. But let's go ahead and take a look at the commander, Mr. Matsuji Aijuin, the new commander here, with his speed as my weapon as his unique base trait. In slot 1, we are running Burn It Down XXL, home run in slot 2, and of course this is the new commander. I believe he's available for the calendar event, and I'm sure he'll be available in crates after this. Third slot there is Look at Me Now for that added concealment, and of course Steer Clear in slot 4. You could argue the other torpedoes, and he does have a new legendary skill called Killing Distance there, which increases your detectability, or decreases it rather, as well as adding some torpedo range. You could probably make an argument that this is a pretty useless perk, considering how, not that often you connect torpedoes, at least for me anyway. But like I said, if you're connecting torpedoes very often in the ship, you're probably getting far too close and you will be yeeted. But let's go ahead and take a look at our gameplay here. I'll see you guys there. All right, guys, here we are on Neighbors. We've got a domination game mode, a bunch of battleships, a carrier. This should be a good game, right? Well, it was until I kind of looked at the map and realized Wargaming, while they did fix a few spawns, have yet to figure out how to balance out those spawns. Why did the carrier spawn between A and B with 3 ships at both A and B, leaving 2 ships by themselves at C? Can it be this difficult to figure out simple math? And I say the same thing when I see people abandoning their flank. So in order to try and be the team player that I preach in my videos, I'm going to go ahead and position myself in between Bravo and Charlie here in order to prevent kind of that potential overload near the Charlie cap. A few people asked me in my, spawn video and my strategy videos what you should do if you're middle spawn. Well, see what your team does, right? In most cases, your other teammates are not smart enough to look at the minimap, so you're going to have to be the determining factor to see what your team does, and then respond accordingly. Also, look at what the enemy team does. We can see that this AL Chapiev here is moving towards this Charlie cap, so we're going to take a few salvos on him. I went ahead and turned out anyway just because of, like I mentioned, I'm in a very squishy ship. We did not get detected, however, so we're just going to kind of sit in this position. We do know that there is a carrier in the game, however, so despite being behind these islands, sometimes we will be detected. That is when we notice that the Bayard, as well as a few of these other battleships, are over here. We do have some good team support, however, so we're going to kind of turn back around, kind of doing exactly what I was just talking about, and put our ship closer to the islands here in the middle. That's going to create a little bit of a crossfire. On top of that, we can utilize this island cover here, kind of bobbing and weaving in and out between these islands. I've said this many times in many different videos, but a few of you are probably seeing me utilizing overview camera a lot in this situation, and that is because I get a much better view of the battle. It's not for any particular trick, it's just kind of one of those habits I've picked up, but it also allows me to see much more of the battle and look at different ships and what they're doing and who they're aiming at, etc. In a ship, especially as one as squishy as this, you have to pay attention to your surroundings. You can't be focused on one ship, potentially sitting broadside to two other spawns, and then all of a sudden, you are in a meme video. But here's a good example of why my torpedo accuracy is so low, and honestly, yours should be too if you're playing this ship semi-correctly. Now, of course, I want you guys to hit the torpedoes unless you're on the red team for me, but having those torpedoes on my boat does me no good. And if I throw them out and connect even one in a situation like this, that is so much more beneficial than just trying to get, a good torpedo accuracy. It's just kind of a running meme at this point. But that Veneto had a forward, path there with the torpedo tracker. We launched them. And unfortunately for us, he probably beached. However, like I mentioned, one of those connections, one of those torpedoes hitting is so much more beneficial than simply having them on your boat. If you have a high torpedo accuracy in ships like these or the Pan Asians, you're probably not playing them correctly because you're getting far too close in ships that are very squishy. But like we mentioned, we kind of cut back towards the middle here. We're playing the island, come find me game in between these islands here. And what this does is, number one, it distracts and harasses those battleships. Our battleships, for the most part, are doing their jobs on the north side of sea there. However, they're kind of locked into this bow tanking fest. And this is why we talked about earlier, we don't want to be exclusively all in one square because a majority of their fleet can bow tank our fleet and vice versa. However, we are kind of located in the center here because of simple map awareness, and we are now able to DPM their broadsides as well as sneak our way into the Bravo cap here. I do want to give a shout out to our A flank. They've done a pretty decent job of holding off that push, and they kind of end up winning that side, which is basically what probably wins the game for us if you're looking at, kind of key plays. That Z31 is spotted, and they are doing a pretty decent job of shooting at him. You will notice, however, that with that final salvo on the King George there, we only have 34,000 damage and 2 fires, which is, I think, about to be 3. Yeah, so 3 fires there with, 60 or 70 hits. So definitely not setting off any damage record alarms in my head. You guys saw the stats, only a 12% fire chance with a 12-second reload. Again, I'm not sure where these ships fit in the grand scheme of the game. I honestly think they're pretty underpowered. However, they are fun to me. I just want to... Some people see my, Johan, my Carl the 14th video, and they're going to be like, oh, well, Aaron's just... Some people form opinions around that. I don't think these ships are going to be too good. However, I do enjoy them. They're a little bit different play style. They're sort of unique. But anyway, we got that cap, we defended the other cap, and got the kill on the Z. So with some simple positioning and paying attention to the minimap, we have given our team a massive advantage. And again, not without the help of the ships over at sea, as well as the ones at A, like we mentioned, the cruiser and destroyer doing their jobs over there. This game, however, is not as complete as I would like it to be. As you can see, a lot of our ships over there at sea are pretty low, so we're going to go ahead and put ourselves in position. However, I would like to note we are now getting focused by the carrier, and I wanted to note that for two reasons. Number one, to show you guys how to quote-unquote dodge, as well as to point out that despite us having a 90 AA rating, we are not necessarily shredding these planes as well as I, ideally would like to, especially with a ship with a quote-unquote 90 rating. But like we mentioned, it's not really the rating you should look at, it is the overall DPS. And briefly touching on the topic of dodging, as we get some pretty good examples a little bit later on in this video. For every carrier, with the exception of maybe the Kaga and the Pobeda, you want to turn away from bombs and turn into torpedoes, which we kind of utilize right here. We can see that the torpedo planes are coming. The King George, his guns are looking away, so we do have some time to turn into these. So just as we were saying, turning into torpedo planes and away from bombers is going to allow you to not get skill issued by the most skillful class in the game. We do take one on the nose, however, but we avoid taking a massive chunk of damage, as I mentioned, by turning into them. I went ahead and popped the Hydra just so we could potentially see them a little bit sooner. The Saipan is now making his second run, and as I mentioned earlier, if our AA was truly 90, or even a little bit better, we wouldn't be getting attacked by all of these planes, as we would be shredding them right now. However, we've dodged accordingly. We did lose our engine, and that is when the King George is starting to look our way. So we're just going to go ahead and kite away from them for the time being. We do have enough health. However, that carrier is sort of focused on us. He really doesn't have, we are the closest target to him, so he really doesn't have a choice as we get a double fire. And I really would have liked to, kind of push into that mass of ships. However, it's more of a winning play to, distract them and kite away towards this carrier, go ahead and take out the carrier, and then kind of return to those ships. By distracting those ships over there, we've given, our ships to the north of sea and around sea a little bit of a break, as you can see that they are sort of trading ships. And even if they trade one-on-one right now, it is still a huge win for our team. So as we were talking about earlier, you do want to turn away from bombs. Probably not the best example, but we were sort of not turning into the broadside of the ships to our left. And even that slight adjustment there allowed us to dodge a majority of his bombs. Bombs are pretty inaccurate anyway, so unless you're just not maneuvering at all, then you should be able to dodge a good chunk of them. Of course, it's RNG dependent. Sometimes, you'll get all four. And that is when the carrier, we've spotted the Piggy, so we're going to go ahead and unload on him. Even with the medium caliber guns, they're still going to get a decent chunk off of him. So we've got a fire, and something to take note of, or just a little trick, I guess, if you're trying to become a better player. As soon as you get that damage con, look at the clock and count or take a minute off of that time, because that is when the damage con of the carrier will be down or off, so that way you can set them on a permanent fire or flood. In the meantime, we are turning into we've turned into the first set of torpedoes and then away from the second set, while simultaneously turning into go bow on with this AL Chapiev. So some textbook positioning by us to dodge that carrier, as well as put ourselves in position to bow tank this Chapiev. No idea why he was spamming AP, however, he was. So it allows us to kind of focus on this Saipan here. If he would have, shot the HE, probably would have done a lot more damage to us. And this is a situation that's a little bit dicey. We could have opened up angle to potentially dodge the carrier. However, like we just mentioned, the Chapiev was shooting AP, so we're just going to have to take our medicine here. Luckily, we've preserved a good chunk of our health, so we can, even if we would have taken all four, we would not have died, and we can focus and eliminate the favorite class in Legends, the carrier. So I'm looking to see if the Chapiev is giving up enough angle, but we're just going to take the final salvo on the Saipan here. And now it is a game of who can get their torpedoes off first. This is honestly a tricky engagement here. You don't want to open up angle too early. Number one, you might miss your torpedoes. Number two, you might get citadeled, as this guy is of course shooting AP as we mentioned. But also you don't want to allow them to get so close that you essentially just trade. However, this Chapayev is kind of maintaining a straight line. We go ahead and turn in to dodge, and it doesn't look like he's going to have enough time to dodge our torpedoes. And yeah, good night. Thanks for playing. One torpedo dev strike there. That is the power of these torpedoes. So like we mentioned earlier, you don't want to be in these situations too often. However, with a little bit of positioning, you know, of course, defending and getting the caps, you can do a lot for your team. Not too much damage, like no high caliber, 124,000, but with the dev strike, 16 total planes, a solo cap there, I believe, and a few defends. 3,300 XP is a fantastic game. I think we often overlook how good, you know, 33, 34, 3,500 XP games are. You're doing a good amount for your team. But that is the Shimanto, guys. I hope you guys have a fantastic evening. Let me know what you guys think of this ship. I will see you in the next one. AA Ron out. Peace.